Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
In the world of film, it's so important to look backward in order to understand what's coming ahead forward, if that makes any sense. But as usual, if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do because you're listening right now. You can subscribe to the podcast. Give us the old click, the like, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, more or less, because that's kind of how we roll. So we're everywhere. So we're at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. It's all good. So find us whoever your favorite provider is, and also we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're on Instagram at where else at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates from the world that we are living in 24/7. But finally, and I say this a lot, but it is most important, please pay us a visit over at intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to write about it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. On this episode, we're talking a little classic cinema as we sit down with the one and only Alicia Malone, who you may know from Turner Classic Movies, and several other various ventures, but she is also an author, and a rather good one. And we're talking about her new book, which is Girls on Film, Lessons from a Life Watching Women in Movies. It's a personal exploration of what it means to be a woman who loves classic film and what she has taken from the lessons she's taken from the past, both positive and negative. It's part movie history, it's part biography or memoir, as it were, but it's really an interesting journal of self-discovery, especially in being a film viewer and a film professional. And we talked with Alicia just about sort of the inspiration behind wanting to do this and sort of the ideas behind it and sort of the challenges therein of being a person who is a film professional and wants to watch classic movies and old movies, much like myself. I mean, we watch new movies too, but it's one of those things where you really get a sense of the importance of curation and how important it is for there to be people out there to sort of highlight the stuff that has happened and the stuff that may have been missed. So people can understand films, things that happen in films going forward. I mean, I think it's a vital part of our history to sort of know what was so we can really appreciate what is. And I mean, Alicia is definitely on the same page as that, and we talked about that in the book and so many other things. And plus, I did bring up the elephant in the room, and we did talk about getting to be in the Criterion closet, which, for all you film nerds out there, you know what a big deal that is. And we talked a little bit about that and just the importance of championing the film nerd, especially when they're women, and there are women film nerds out there, and Alicia definitely doing a good job on that front. But check out her book. Like I said, it's called Girls on Film, Lessons from a Life of Watching Women in Films. It's available at all your favorite retailers now, and you can also check her out at places like Turner Classic Movies and Filmstruck, and she's given TED Talks. She's really one of the best in the game, and I was so pleased to be able to talk with her. So I hope you enjoy our talk because, quite frankly, it's a pretty good one. All right. Well, obviously, Alicia, just thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for the time today.
Thank you so much for wanting to talk to me. I appreciate it.
Now, I mean, obviously, congratulations on the book. And I mean, I think the first thing that really stood out for me was there was a line in there that you said that classic films can be I'm forgetting the exact quote, but they're empowering but also degrading at the same time.
And I'm kind of curious for you, was that sort of the impetus to sort of tell these stories? Because I love in the book just how you're going into deep cuts as opposed to sort of maybe the films that people would expect. There's a lot more deeper cuts in there that I think people would initially think.
Yeah, I think like many classic film fans lately, we've been grappling with the idea of problematic films and progressive films, as you do with any kind of artwork. And I started to realize that in the past, I had been so simplistic in my thinking about these films. I was so wanting to put them into a nice, neat box. And instead, these films are paradoxes sometimes and contradict themselves. And are both good and bad, and you can love them and you can also hate little parts of them as well. So I started thinking about that even more during the pandemic when I noticed how I was turning to certain films for comfort and why films were nostalgic for me and how they gave me a sense of safety, even though it wasn't necessarily a safe time for everyone back in, the 50s and 40s. And so I started to consider that more and think about what does that what has that done for me? What kind of lessons has it taught me? And why do I watch classic films in the first place? And I thought it was to find answers, but I really think it's to find more questions, to provoke me into having these conversations that aren't easily answered.
Well, no, and I mean, I love that you say that because I mean, I've always been a big proponent of just classic film and just watching what came before us to understand what's coming ahead of us because, you don't learn if you don't do that sort of thing. And I mean, and it's so important. And I mean, there's a chapter in the book, I think it's chapter 8. You're referencing sort of the heiress, and it's sort of stories just about women who, when they're not necessarily either sort of his girl Friday or glammed up or that kind of thing, they're other stories, they're real
Yeah.
stories. How important was it for you to sort of try to put in all the colors of the rainbow of what it means to be a woman on film?
Yeah, I tried. I mean, of course, there's many areas that I left out, but just thinking about a movie like The Heiress, which has a wonderful performance by Olivia de Havilland, and you can read the story as being very empowering towards the end. Perhaps she's made her own way and she's found some self-respect, or perhaps she's going to be alone forever. And the idea of a homely woman, like you said, a non-glammed up woman, that means she's going to be alone forever. All of these messages about women that are ingrained into all pop culture, makes me think about what that has meant to me over the time. So yeah, I started to think, okay, what are the various areas? And I thought the best way to structure the book was a chronological look at my life, sort of snapshots from my life. Okay, what are the films that I loved as a child? What are the films I loved as a teenager? What are the films as I was in my 20s? And especially as I got into my 30s and knew that I didn't want to have kids or have children. Like, what does that mean as a woman when everything in our culture tells us that that's what women are supposed to do? So I tried to cover as many areas as possible. One area that I didn't get to that, maybe it's for a future book is age. And as I get older, experiencing what it's like to be a woman. Now I'm 40 and people say once you're past 40, like that's it. So I'm not sure what's around the corner yet. Maybe that's a future chapter.
Well, and I mean, something else I love, because I will be fully honest, both of our experiences seeing the never ending story for the first time are very, very similar. I will put that on the table right now. And I mean, it is for me, especially one of those films that sort of made me sort of interested not only in the magic of cinema, but just sort of understanding cinema. And I mean, I'm kind of curious because there tends to be sort of the thinking these days in the Netflix algorithms of the world, and this, that, and the other, that if it's old, it doesn't have value. And I mean,
Mm.
what was it about classic film in particular for you that made you want to sort of dive into and discover that value?
Yeah, I think it has such value because they are time capsules of a moment. Never Ending Story makes you think of children's movies throughout the 1980s and just how dark they were,
Yeah.
how disturbing at times. But I love coming across films like that give me some kind of experience, whether it's good or bad, traumatic, makes me laugh or makes me cry. It just provokes some kind of response in me. And that's one of my issues I have with algorithms, is that it's trying to feed you more of what you like. And sometimes I think you need to see something different that you perhaps don't know that you'll like, or perhaps will just give a different response than a pleasant one. And classic films, because they are so much a little bit of time, I think there's value in delving into what was happening in America at that time, the world at that time, for women, for people of color, fashion. I mean, there's so much in there that you can explore. That's what I find the value in classic films. And they're classics for a reason. It's because their stories are timeless, the characters will still provoke emotions, and they didn't have the special effects to rely on. So they had to really rely on good, solid dialogue and storylines.
For sure, absolutely. And I mean, I definitely found, I mean, especially as we were sort of in the thick of the pandemic, that when people had more time, it was like, oh, maybe I should watch that, or maybe I should watch that. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm kind of curious for you. I mean, especially given your work at TCM, like, was there almost more added pressure on you, even like being stuck at home, but at the
Yeah.
same time going, I better program something good so people can like it?
I know. Well, yeah, I was definitely, the programming department were
Yeah.
thinking about what it was like for people being stuck at home, because we heard so much from viewers that TCM was really saving them through this dark time. And I felt the same way, just the comfort of having a channel that's so familiar and plays the stories that you like. I definitely went through that myself of, okay, so there's still, lots of films that I haven't seen. I need to just tick them all off my list while I have time at home. But what I really gravitated towards was films that I'd seen before and loved. And I think it was because it was such an uncertain time that there was something nice in watching a film that is going to end happily. And I started to really enjoy visiting, the Esther Williams films and the Elvis Presley films, these movies that were so formulaic that the one, you just interchange one to the other. It's just very, very simple. It follows the same beats, but there was something really comforting in the predictability of that. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, for the programming department, and I mean, they always take suggestions from us, which is nice, but they really did think about what people wanted to see or needed to see during this time. And it was gratifying to hear from viewers that they really appreciated having the channel and keeping it going throughout everything.
No, I mean, this is something I've got to ask. It's almost more of a personal question, but just I find in this job, particularly being a critic, a podcaster, what have you, there always is a little bit of a pressure, and it's a self-imposed pressure to see everything. But at
Yeah.
some point, you realize that, okay, that's probably not going to happen. I'm kind of curious, was there a moment for you where you realized that, okay, maybe I'm not going to see everything, or is it just a question of pushing through that and still wanting to have that dream of really checking everything off the list?
I know. Yeah, I had that realization a couple of years ago, and it was quite depressing. It was like, so even if I watch 4 films a day for the rest of my life, say I live till I'm 90, I'm still not going to see everything that I want to see and everything that I need to see. And actually, I recently got rid of Netflix and a lot of the streaming services because I was like, I just don't have time to watch these movies. I have so many films on my watch list. Definitely what's shifted for me though in the past couple of years is that feeling of needing to prove myself,
Yeah.
because especially when you have this job, as I mean, people really expect you to have seen everything, and I've seen way more than most people, but of course there's still holes in my movie watching, and at first it was like, yes, I've seen that movie, but no, now I'm just like, I haven't seen it, but it's on my list and I'm going to watch it. But ultimately, that's what's exciting about film, is that there's always more to learn and there's always more to see. And just when you think you reach the pinnacle, you have so much more that opens up to you, and you can go down these rabbit holes. And so I do have Criterion Collection and TCM. They're my two, and they give me plenty of films that I've never seen before.
Well, I mean, that kind of leads into my next question, because we live in such a day and age of options. I mean, professionally, I find it overwhelming giving all the stuff there is to watch. How would you sort of advise sort of a viewer out there who wants to sort of discover more about old film, or about, anything really that maybe might be out sort of the quote unquote wheelhouse that we're getting in the 24/7 news cycle cinematically? How would you sort of pitch
Yes.
them on trying to discover new work?
Yeah, it's so hard, isn't it? Because of how much choice there is. I mean, even myself, when I had Netflix and Hulu and all them, I would spend so long just searching for something to watch and then sort of give up. And so I can understand that it's overwhelming for people to want to dive into classic films and not knowing where to start. The great thing about TCM, of course, is the fact that it's curated by people who know films, love films. So you can always turn on TCM and see something that has been handpicked for you. Also, that's why I like Criterion Channel, because they have themes and it's not an algorithm, it's actually programmers. But I just feel like curation is going to become more and more important, and experts telling you, giving you advice about what to watch, people that you can find who have the same sensibility or different sensibility to you that you trust. Of course, then the question is, okay, can we get the wide variety of people
For sure.
to be able to give their expertise? Because right now, I'd say the easiest place to start are those film canons. And I know that they're starting to be re-looked at. Something like the AFI Top 100 for
Right.
so long did not have any female directors at all. And but I think that they're starting to revisit all of that. So that was where I started, and Leonard Maltin's Movie Guide is where I started. So just anyone that you trust that can give you a way in to watching films. Letterboxd is another great
Yeah.
resource. TCM has just started their own account on Letterboxd, so
Oh,
they'll be keeping
fantastic.
a list of everything that is themes of the month, and movies programmed on Noir Alley, and so hopefully people can look to places like that to see a list curated by people and they can give it a try.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I mean, I love just that you reference not just TCM, but Criterion as well, because I mean, obviously, I think everyone out there aspires to be in the closet one day, and
Oh,
you actually
yes.
spent time in the closet.
Oh, my gosh.
Was it as intimidating as it looked?
Yes. So intimidating, because I had just met the Criterion team. It was when I started working on Filmstruck,
Right.
RIP, our streaming service with Criterion. And we were just at lunch, and I was talking to Peter Becker, and I was saying how much I love the closet videos. And he was like, "Oh, you should take a look in the closet." I was like, "I would love that." And they said, "Well, why don't we just do a video with you?" And I was like, "Really?" And part of me was like, "Yay, I get DVDs." The other part was like, "Oh my gosh, what? I'm not prepared for this, and I don't know how to approach this." And some amazing people have been in this closet. So I really went in there, and it is overwhelming because it's by spine number. So it's not
Sure.
even alphabetical or in different directors. So I was literally just searching for anything that I knew and took it off and tried to say something, put it in my bag. And now, whenever I get to go to the office, they're really nice, and they say, "Do you need anything from the closet?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I could take a look," and shove them in my bag. But there's now I keep a running list of movies that I want to see and have in my collection at home. I love physical media, so I'm building up my DVD collection, and I've bought lots of stuff from Criterion as well. But it is nice whenever I get to go in there.
Well, you and me both. But I mean, just to put a bow on this, there is one reference from the book that I've got to bring up. I love how you referenced that Hitchcock was the first director that made you sort of aware of direction, and just how his use of his female characters was, I mean, I guess the best word would be to say interesting, because it was,
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't necessarily good, it wasn't necessarily bad, it just kind of was. And I'm kind of curious, as someone who looks at classic film and is also sort of aware of new film, has the depiction of women in film changed, or is it better, or is it just sort of evolving into something different, sort of on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think it's evolving into something different. It is getting better, and there's more female characters now. There's definitely the conversation about this has helped. But what I sort of prickle at is the idea of the strong female character. And I'm sure I've said that in interviews with stars, like, "Oh, this is a strong female character." But usually, when we talk about a strong female character, it means that they are basically like men. They drive
Right.
cars and they shoot guns, and that's not really necessarily a female strength. So I think we are getting there slowly. I think there could be much more nuance with female characters on screen, but at least there is more awareness about the need for both gender and racial diversity on screen, how important it is for people to see. So getting there, on our way.
Well, you know what, Alicia, just I mean, I definitely think your book and the work you've done is definitely a help there too,
Oh,
because
thank you.
there are female, movie nerds too, and
Yes.
they deserve to have their voices heard. And I mean, just thank you for the work and keep it up, and thank you for the time today.
Thank you, Dave. It was so nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.